Hey guys, welcome back, 1776 or bust. So today, what we're going to be taking a look at is this Glock 48 versus this Smith & Wesson Performance Center. This is the 4-inch. This is the one I've done a couple of videos on already. Been very pleased with this handgun overall. Today's going to be comparing two guns that I think are very equal in a lot of different ways, and maybe some inequality in certain other ways. So we're going to take a look at them each on the table. We're going to compare both and then, of course, contrast both. And more importantly, you're going to get a chance to see how they shot, which one I think overall shot better than the other. But again, keep in mind, there are some slight differences between these two handguns, and it's hard to say which one is going to actually outplay the other. Again, keep in mind, a lot of people are talking about that SIG P365, the XL, or that long slide that they're going to be coming out with, and that more than likely may be the dethroner of both of these just because of capacity. Again, it's going to always be about personal preference. Some people don't like SIGs. I may be one of those people. Some people prefer Glock over Smith and vice versa. So let's take a look at both of these handguns on the table. Let's look at some shooting, and overall, let's talk about which one actually is better, if there really is one. And again, at the end of the video, it's going to be up to you to decide. This is just my opinion on what I saw about both these handguns. So let's go over to some shooting video, and let's talk about these guns.
So I think the biggest question is always going to be, how does the gun shoot? And in this comparison with the Glock 48, I have to say that the Glock 48 is actually a really good gun to shoot. I don't personally have any problems with the handgun. I think it shoots fairly flat. I think it also shoots fairly well. In my opinion, for a single stack, kind of a pseudo Glock 19, I think it does the job very well. So again, for me, the 48 is a fairly good gun, and good enough probably that I'm going to keep it, even though I don't know why, to be honest with you. And the reason why I say that is because the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 Shield 4-inch slide is just as good. And interestingly enough, both guns feel fairly similar in their recoil, maybe not necessarily in their ergonomics, so to speak, but at the same time, very similar in the way they shoot. Now, what you're going to see here is I'm actually going to drop the muzzle in your camera there. There you go. And that is of my Shield 2.0. And I do that just to kind of notate what I'm shooting. I don't really talk during the shooting. But you can see even my first shot, it's low to the left. Again, trigger control issues. Now, what you're seeing here is the target actually starting to develop a lot of good holes right in the center of the target. Nothing is really going out of that center area, which again, for me, I personally think that's fine, especially in a self-defense situation and on a self-defense target. I mean, it is a silhouette of a human being, albeit a very skinny one, but at the same time, I think it does the job that needs to be done. And as the targets come back to you, you're going to see that a lot of it is very centered, a couple of low ones there, but nonetheless, pretty good shots. Now, in this one, what you're seeing, again, I'm going to start off with the Glock 48. I'm going to shoot the 10 rounds and then ultimately switch over to the M&P and shoot the 8-round magazine. And again, what you're seeing here is the Glock 48. I'm opening it up a little bit. I'm shooting a little bit quicker. And as a result, the sights are feeling good. You know, everything feels good at this point. I mean, the gun is shooting the way I know the Glock 48 can shoot. Now, I'm sure somebody of a better shot could probably shoot it better than me, and that's fine. But I'm very, considered very happy right now. Now, the 2.0 Shield that you see that I just dropped again, very similar pattern of shooting. It's going to be very centered. There are not really any flyers to really be concerned with. And at this point, everything is starting to tighten up. The groups are starting to get very centered, almost stacking, really, when you look at it. And as the target comes back, you're going to see that there's a pretty good hole punched in the center there. I think at this point, and I'm going to draw it back a little bit on my camera, basically, it was a good day. So even in the comparison of recoil, and I always smile on the camera when I'm happy shooting, but if you look at the guns in both of these camera shots, again, not the best, but I do what I can by myself. You know, the Smith & Wesson Shield has a bit more of a look of recoil, I guess, maybe because it rides a little bit higher in my hand. But I have to say there really was not a huge difference between how the guns felt. I would say that the Glock 48 felt just a little bit hotter when you're shooting it. In other words, a little bit more of muzzle rise, but nothing that would be so discernible that would say one gun versus the other is less snappy or more snappy. I think overall the Shield just felt a little bit better shooting and was a little bit smoother. Overall, you have two fantastic handguns right here. So I don't want to extend this video more than I have to, so I'm not going to go through all of the specific statistics on length, height, weight, what color it is and all that other stuff. But I do want to point out some things about these guns that I like, that I don't like. each gun has an acquired taste. There are going to be people who love the Glock 48 because it's a Glock. People are going to love the Smith because it's a Smith. Now, what I have found from both guns overall is if I put them in both my hands, what I had found when I was handling these was that the Glock 48 has the advantage because it sits a little bit lower in the hand. And if you're one of those people that like to have, I guess you can say, a very low bore axis, however you want to say that, then the Glock 48 is going to be the winner for you because the Smith just is a little bit taller than the Glock 48. Now, is that a deal breaker to get a Smith? I don't think so, because both shot very well, both handled very well. I didn't feel a significant difference between the both, or between each other, really. Looking at the slides, one of the things you're going to notice is you got one that's silver, one that's black. So you have the Armonite finish on the slide from the Smith, and you have this PVD coating on the Glock 48. I have to be honest with you, I actually like the Armonite coating better. The 48 silver, it actually is wearing a little bit, and I don't know if that's going to be normal wear or if it's just kind of just the way the finish is on here. So I'm actually going to pull everything out, and that's going to lead us into the next part of this comparison. But you're going to notice inside here, you can see a little bit of wear going on where the barrel hood would ride. Again, there's nothing coming off necessarily on the barrel. So I'm assuming that this is coming off the finish on the gun itself. Again, it's not necessarily needing to be cleaned. It already was cleaned, but you can definitely see there are some markings in there. But again, is that going to really destroy this gun? Probably not. It probably won't do anything over time except for ruin the finish, and then you can always Cerakote it, which I may be doing anyway because I can't stand the silver. If I was to take down the Smith, again, the Smith is pretty simple to do. Just push that forward, and then you can just take out all of your little pieces here. You've got your guide rod, your barrel, blah, 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 blah. Again, if you look at the Armonite finish of this gun, it has handled itself very well. 400 rounds for this gun. The Glock has about probably, 550, 600 around there, maybe a little bit less. What you're going to notice, though, is that the finishing on this gun I do prefer. It is almost like a satin finish. It's not matte finish, and it's not a too glossy finish. It's just the right amount of look to it. And again, I do like the way this looks considerably better than the Glock. Also, you're going to notice the dust covers on both. The dust cover on the Glock is it's like a rounded area here, has a hole in the bottom. Again, if you're asking yourself, what is this hole for? This hole is just simply to remove that front sight. You'll need a tool to get in there and be able to unscrew the screw, as opposed to, these sights right here, which you can just punch in and out. The dust covers are also slightly different, and I honestly have to say that if you're a person who likes the way guns look, the M&P looks just a little bit more complete. It looks like it's a little bit more quality, I guess you could say. The front here reminds me a lot of the 5-inch slide on a full-size 2.0, and I do like the way that looks. Obviously, you have two serrations or two areas of serrations, one on the front, one on the rear. Most people like having the front and the rear, especially if you like those press checks. You can see that they've actually beveled the front here, which was kind of the gripe on the early Gen 5 19s, and they have adjusted that, obviously. With the Smith, the slide has your rear serrations and really non-useful front serrations. Again, if you can grab onto those, good luck, but I don't think that's really what it's for. I think it's more for looks more than anything. Again, both have a pretty good bite on the serrations, nothing to really worry about. Stock sights that came with the Glock had the field goal post sights, which most people complain about, including myself. And now you can see I have the Ameriglow iDot Pros, which is a huge improvement. And then on the the Smith & Wesson 2.0 Shield, this actually came because it's a performance center with these high-vis fiber optics, and that's who makes them, high vis. These are their light waves or light weaves, whatever they call them. And what I have done is actually remove the reds and put some black pipes in the rear, kept the front the green, and I just like the way that looks better. It actually allows my eye to go right to the front, which is a little bit easier for me. Again, one of the things I noticed about this gun was that it did not come with extra pipes in the box. I don't know if that was just my gun in particular or if that's the way they're all sent, but I do wish Smith would have thrown extra pipes in there in case you wanted to do this. I just happen to have these at my house already, so I use them. Other than that, there's really not a significant difference in weight. I can tell you that much. Again, this gun is, I think, 20 to 21 ounces. And then this gun is about 21 ounces as well. So it's so close, it's hard to tell where the big weight difference is until you start breaking the gun down a little bit. Another thing I'm going to show you right now is where some of that weight comes into play, or I should say where the significance of some of that weight comes into play is the barrel. You're going to notice that the barrel thickness on both of these is quite interesting. As a matter of fact, if I show it to you right now, you're going to see that the barrel on the Shield is a lot thicker, maybe not a lot thicker, but definitely thicker than the barrel of the Glock 48. Again, I just think that that may not necessarily mean much, but at the same time, I do like the fact that they came out with a thicker barrel, and I just feel like, to me, that just shows a little bit higher quality in the materials that they're using as opposed to the Glock. But again, does that mean it's going to outperform the Glock? Does it mean the Glock is going to fail? Probably not, guys. These are just little differences that I found now that I own both of these handguns. One of the other things that I noticed and that I'm actually a little bit, I guess, unhappy with is the guide rods. Now, the guide rod on the Glock 48 is a Glock 43 guide rod, and you can see the difference in size. It's ridiculously small compared to the 2.0 4-inch Shield. And I don't understand why Glock just didn't make a full-size guide rod for this. Yes, I know they want to save money and all that other great stuff. But at the same time, I just think they kind of cheapened out a little bit. I've had a lot of problems with this short guide rod, whether it's putting the slide on, taking the slide off. This guide rod has shot out when I've actually taken the slide off a couple of times. Has nothing to do with what I'm doing. It's just simply the fact that this guide rod is a little bit too short. And that's just what I found about it, and that's my experience with it. If your experience is not that, then that's great. But unfortunately for me, I don't like this guide rod. I think they really should have extended it out. And when you compare both guide rods in your hands, you can definitely feel the weight here on the Shield guide rod as opposed to this one, which is definitely a little bit lighter in weight and obviously a little bit shorter in length. Grip texture. For those of you who like the Glock's grip texture, especially Gen 5s and Gen 4s, this is very similar, as you can see. What you're also going to notice, though, is that 2.0 grip texture, it's unbelievable, guys. It's probably one of the best out there. This is actually a little bit better and a little bit user-friendly as opposed to some of the other ones. This one feels a little bit less aggressive, but at the same time, just aggressive enough to get a good bite on your hand. Again, I had no slipping out of my hand, obviously, when I was shooting the day I took it out. Nonetheless, it worked really well. Stock triggers, as you know, the Glock has your trigger safety, usually in the trigger shoe. I've obviously changed it out for an Apex because of the preference of having this trigger safety go all the way in and be recessed. So this has been changed out for obvious reasons, at least in my opinion. Same thing with the Shield, can't stand the hinge trigger. If I had to choose between the stock triggers, I'm actually going to go with the Glock because I just cannot stand the hinge trigger. I don't know why Smith just doesn't abandon it, but they keep it. But ultimately, I change them out for Apex. And again, that's personal preference. It doesn't mean you have to. But if I had to choose between a preference of stock trigger, I'm going to go with the Glock because I just think the Glock works better for me as opposed to the Smith & Wesson hinge. In regards to magazines, they're about the same length, but what you're going to notice here is that there's a difference in width for obvious reasons. The Glock is a little bit thicker because you're going to fit 10 rounds as opposed to the 8 rounds on the Shield. And if you compare both guns in the back, you are going to notice that the grip of the Glock is thicker compared to the Shield. Again, I'm not going to measure these out, but you can definitely feel it in the hands, which brings me to kind of like my last, I guess you could say, compare and contrast. The Glock 48 polymer versus the Shield polymer. I'm going to tell you right now, this feels super cheap. The Glock 48 feels really cheap in the hands in regards to the polymer. It feels lighter. It feels thinner. It is 100% more flexible. You can see the flex right there in the mag well. Now, again, is that going to affect the function of the handgun? Probably not, but you can definitely feel a difference. As a matter of fact, if I go to squeeze this gun, I can actually squeeze that polymer to the point where I'm actually making the polymer bend, actually warp a little bit. Now, again, this doesn't have a magazine in it. If I put a magazine in there like that, it really mitigates that. However, no magazine in, and you can definitely manipulate that polymer. In regards to the Shield, guess what? You don't see that flex. You don't have it. It's more reinforced. It's a little bit thicker. Feels a little bit better in the hand. Again, when you put the 8-round extended magazine in, there's actually no play. Now, in regards to grip length, really quick, this will be like kind of the last thing. The grip length is about the same, but you'll notice that the base plate on the Glock extends a little bit further out than the 8-round magazine extension on the Shield. I think that's what makes this a little bit more difficult to hide. And I think that's where the advantage comes in with the Shield, because you can drop this, put the flat base plate in there with the 7+1, and now you have a fully concealed gun with a long slide. So I think that's where the advantage comes in regards to the Shield. However, if you like the higher capacity right out of the box, this would be your go-to. Now, overall, which of these guns would I choose? I'm going to use the words of my friend KS Gun Guy, and I'm going to say, if I had to choose one, if I could only have one, which would be the one that I would choose? And it's really a tough choice because the Glock is a very nice gun. You know you're going to get a reliable handgun that, honestly, guys, is going to work, and it's going to work every time you take it out, at least for the most part. But there are some things about the Glock that I don't like. I don't like the fact that they really cheapened out on this guide rod. I think they could have done better with that. I also feel like the polymer is a little bit too thin. And overall, I think that when it comes to the fit and finish of this Glock 48, there just seems to be a couple of things that, in my opinion, they could have done better with. Whether it's the guide rod, whether it's the finish of the MPV coating, whether it's the extension of this magazine down, maybe make this a little bit thinner. I just think that Glock kind of missed a couple of things, but at the same time really created a good solid handgun with 10 rounds out of the box, and it's such a slim carryable handgun, which I have to say is fantastic. Now, if I look at the shield and I say, what are some of the things about the shield? The shield is just really a very well-built handgun. The materials they use, to me, feel a little bit more in regards to higher quality. Obviously, with the thicker barrel and the longer guide rod, I think that just adds to the gun in regards to its overall durability, its overall usability, because I think you're going to find that the gun will shoot a little bit flatter, maybe not necessarily significantly flatter, but at the same time, that extra weight, that little bit of weight in the front in regards to the guide rod and the slide, I think are going to make a huge difference for most shooters. Again, the triggers on these are comparable. None's better than the other. However, I do prefer the stock trigger on the Glock versus the M&P. The sights on the M&P out of the box were better than this. And the ergonomics for me just seem to work better for me on the M&P than the Glock. But that's not to say the Glock doesn't work either. So this is a very tough video, and it's a very tough decision. But if I could only choose one, the one that I'm going to choose, it's going to be the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 4-inch shield. I think Smith & Wesson once again hit a home run with this gun. It's not that I'm bashing Glock. I just think that this seems to be a little bit more in overall everything, better quality, better fit and finish, with a couple of added options out of the box that I think improve the value of this handgun. Does it mean the 48 is going to go away? No, because this is a great carry gun. I haven't been able to carry this yet, so I don't know, but I'm expecting this to be just as good. Now, capacity-wise, it only has 8, but I'm going to be getting some mag guts in to test out and see how that looks or how it actually works. And then I'll have 10 rounds in this and 10 rounds in that. But overall, both fantastic guns. But if I had to choose one, it's going to be this one every day. So I'm going to put a challenge out there to my buddy KS. KS, I know you got both these guns, so I want to hear what you have to say. Which of the two would you choose and why? I get a feeling I know which one it's going to be, but for me, it's definitely going to be this one. So I hope you guys had a great time watching this very long video. I want to hear what your comments are. If you have experience with both or one or the other, which one do you prefer and why? And which one you think may have won. Hope you guys have a great night. Stay safe. And as always, everyone, freedom is never free.